was
Tonight,
7 months
we
pregnant with
celebrate
twins
true love
when I watched my
and the
mother-in-law
joining
raise a
of these
champagne
two
glass and
incredible
toast to the woman
families.
sleeping with my husband. 200 guests applauded. My husband held her hand, and I stood in the corner of my own anniversary party, realizing that everyone in that room knew the truth except me.
You thought you could challenge me.
They thought I would cry.
Sign the papers.
They thought I would
consider
beg.
your career
They thought I would
finished.
quietly disappear like a good little wife. But here is what the Mitchell family did not know about me. I had spent 10 years as a forensic accountant before I married into their $400 million empire.
I believe this
And
evidence
while they were
speaks for
busy
itself,
planning my
Victoria.
replacement,
All
I
you
was
need to
busy
do is sign
uncovering
the agreement
secrets
and this
that
can
could
all be
destroy
over.
everything they built. A murdered husband, a hidden paternity
Oh,
test,
my loves,
and
I'm so
$23
glad
million
you're
that
home.
vanished into thin air. What happened next at that anniversary party? Let me tell you, it did not end the way anyone expected. But before we dive into this story, if you love watching the underdog fight back and win, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a story. Trust me, you are going to want to stay until the very end of this one. The twist in Chapter 9 made my jaw drop, and I am the one telling the story. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I was 7 months pregnant with twins when I watched my mother-in-law raise a champagne glass and toast to the woman who had been sleeping with my husband. 200 guests applauded. My husband held her hand, and I stood in the corner of my own anniversary party, realizing that everyone in that room knew except me. But here is what they did not know. I had something that could destroy everything they had built, and by the end of that night, I would use it. Before I tell you what happened next, if you love stories where the underdog fights back and wins, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, this is not just a story about revenge. This is a masterclass in taking back your power. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Rachel Dawson, and 6 years ago, I thought I had found my fairy tale. I grew up in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. My father was a mechanic who worked 60-hour weeks and still could not afford to fix the leak in our roof. My mother, Denise, served lunch at Jefferson Elementary School for $14 an hour. They never complained. They just worked. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. I became a certified public accountant at a mid-sized firm in Chicago. Nothing glamorous, just numbers and spreadsheets in a small apartment I was proud to call my own. Then I met Marcus Mitchell at a charity gala I was auditing. He was tall, charming, with the kind of smile that made you forget your own name. When he asked for my number, I laughed and said he must be joking. Men like Marcus Mitchell did not date women like Rachel Dawson. But he called, and he kept calling. The Mitchell family was worth over $400 million. Real estate empire spanning 3 states. Marcus was the heir apparent, the golden son, the future of everything. And for some reason I still do not understand, he chose me. The wedding was everything I never knew I wanted. 300 guests at the Mitchell estate, a dress that cost more than my parents made in a year. My mother cried through the entire ceremony, and I thought they were tears of joy. Looking back, I think she saw something I refused to see. On my wedding day, my new mother-in-law, Victoria, pulled me aside during the reception. She was 64 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, diamonds at her throat. Her smile did not reach her eyes. She said, "Welcome to the family, Rachel. Just remember that being a Mitchell wife requires sacrifice. Your old life is over now." I laughed nervously. I thought she was being dramatic. She was not. Within the first year, Victoria had dismantled everything I was. My job was too demanding for a Mitchell wife, so I quit. My friends were not suitable for our social circle, so I stopped calling them. My parents made Marcus uncomfortable with their modest ways, so I visited less and less. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once I proved myself, things would change. I told myself that love was worth any sacrifice. Looking back, I should have paid attention to that first red flag. When someone moves you away from where you belong and calls it for your comfort, they are testing how much you will accept. If I could tell my past self anything, it would be this. The first compromise is never the last. For 5 years, I played the perfect Mitchell wife. I attended the charity galas. I smiled at the business dinners. I learned which fork to use and which topics to avoid. I became so good at being what they wanted that I forgot who I actually was. Then I got pregnant. Twins, a boy and a girl. The first Mitchell grandchildren. I thought everything would change. I thought Victoria would finally accept me. I thought Marcus would stop working late every night. I thought I had finally earned my place in this family. I was wrong about everything. The morning of our 6th anniversary, I woke up feeling almost happy. I was 7 months pregnant, huge and uncomfortable, but excited. Victoria had planned a grand celebration at the Mitchell estate. 200 guests, live orchestra. She called it a tribute to 6 years of marriage. I should have wondered why she was being so generous. I stood in front of my closet trying to find something that fit. Nothing in my old wardrobe worked anymore. I finally settled on a simple navy dress, conservative and appropriate. Then I saw the garment bag hanging on the back of the door. Inside was a beige dress, shapeless, dull. A note was attached in Victoria's handwriting. Thought this would be more comfortable for your condition. See you tonight. I told myself she was being thoughtful. I put on the beige dress and looked in the mirror. I looked like a ghost of myself, invisible, forgettable. But I wanted to keep the peace. I wanted to get through one night without conflict. So I wore the beige dress and told myself it did not matter. At the estate, the ballroom was transformed into something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across hundreds of white roses. Waiters circulated with champagne. An orchestra played softly in the corner. I made my way to the head table where Victoria was arranging place cards. I asked where I should sit. She did not look up. She just said, "Oh, Rachel, you will be more comfortable at the side table. Less walking back and forth. Better for the babies." I wanted to argue. The head table was for family. I was family. But Victoria was already walking away, and I did not want to make a scene. So I sat alone at a table near the kitchen entrance, watching guests fill the ballroom. I recognized senators, business leaders, society wives. They all greeted Victoria like she was royalty. Most of them did not even notice me. Then the main doors opened, and I saw her. She was wearing white, a stunning white dress that clung to her perfect figure, blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. She walked in like she owned the room. Victoria rushed to greet her with more warmth than she had ever shown me. She kissed both her cheeks. She held her hands. She smiled a real smile. And I thought, that is strange. Victoria does not smile like that for anyone. I did not know yet that I was watching my replacement make her entrance. I did not know that everyone in that room knew a secret I was about to discover. And I definitely did not know that by the end of the night, I would burn their entire world to the ground. But I am getting ahead of myself. The woman in white made her way through the crowd like a celebrity on a red carpet. Everyone wanted to talk to her. Everyone wanted to be near her. I asked a waiter who she was. He looked surprised that I did not know. "That is Courtney Wells," he said. "Judge Wells' daughter. She has been at the estate quite often lately." Something cold settled in my stomach. I watched Courtney glide toward the head table where my husband was standing. Marcus turned when he saw her, and his face lit up in a way I had not seen in years. He pulled out a chair for her, the chair right next to his, the chair where I should have been sitting. I stood up from my table near the kitchen. My back ached and my feet were swollen, but I walked across that ballroom with my head held high. I would take my rightful place next to my husband at our anniversary party. When I reached the head table, Marcus looked annoyed to see me. Courtney was laughing at something he said, her hand resting casually on his arm. I said, "Marcus, I think there has been a mix-up with the seating." He did not move. He just said, "Honey, you should rest. Think of the babies. You look tired." Courtney looked at me with practiced sympathy. She said, "You must be Rachel. I have heard so much about you. Please take my seat. I can move." But she did not move, and Marcus did not ask her to. He turned back to Courtney and continued their conversation like I was not standing there, like I was invisible, like I did not exist. I felt 200 pairs of eyes watching me stand there, pregnant and humiliated, being dismissed by my own husband at my own anniversary party. I walked to the bathroom as quickly as my swollen body would allow. I locked myself in a stall and tried to breathe through the panic rising in my chest. Here is something they do not tell you about shock. Your brain tries to protect you by making you think you misunderstood. Maybe I heard wrong. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe I am being paranoid. If you have to work that hard to explain away what you saw, you already know the truth. I was still trying to compose myself when I heard voices enter the bathroom. 2 women, judging by the click of their heels. One of them said, "Did you see her face when Courtney walked in? Poor thing has no idea." The other laughed. "Victoria has been planning this for months. The mistress is already picking out nursery colors for the main house." My blood turned to ice. The first voice said, "I almost feel sorry for her. She really thought she belonged here. But you know Victoria, she has been looking for a replacement since the wedding." They reapplied their lipstick and left, still laughing. I stood in that bathroom stall, 7 months pregnant, ugly, crying so hard that my waterproof mascara proved to be an absolute liar. Note to self, Maybelline owes me a refund. But beneath the tears, something else was growing. Something hot and sharp. Anger. This was not just an affair. This was a coordinated campaign to replace me. Everyone knew except me, and they were all watching, waiting to see me break. I wiped my face and walked back into that ballroom. I would find Marcus. I would demand answers. I would not let them see me fall apart. I searched the ballroom, but Marcus was not at the head table anymore. Courtney was gone too. One of the waiters quietly told me he saw them walk toward the garden. I made my way through the crowd, past the champagne towers and the orchestra, out the glass doors into the moonlit garden. The Mitchell Estate gardens were famous, acres of roses and fountains and carefully manicured hedges. I found them by the fountain. Marcus had his hands in Courtney's hair. Her white dress was pressed against his black suit. They were kissing like they had done it 1,000 times before. I must have made a sound because Marcus looked up. He saw me standing there in my shapeless, beige dress, my mascara ruined, my world falling apart. He did not even have the decency to look ashamed. He just sighed and said, "Rachel, this is not what it looks like." Courtney stepped back, but she did not apologize. She looked at me with something close to pity. Then she smoothed her white dress and walked back toward the ballroom, leaving me alone with my husband. Marcus ran his hand through his hair. He said, "You were not supposed to find out like this." I asked him how long. I barely recognized my own voice. He said, "Does it matter?" I said, "How long?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "But 2 years, since the Henderson merger. Courtney was handling the legal side. 2 years, 2 years of lies, 2 years of late nights at the office and business trips and excuses I was stupid enough to believe." I asked him if his mother knew. He laughed. He actually laughed. "She introduced us, Rachel. Who do you think has been arranging everything?" The garden started spinning. I grabbed the edge of the fountain to steady myself. I was going to be sick. I was going to pass out. I was going to scream. But I did none of those things. Because in that moment, standing in that garden with the man I had given up everything for, I realized something important. Crying would not save me. Begging would not save me. Only I could save me. And I had just been given the most valuable thing in any war. Information. I looked at Marcus Mitchell, the man I had loved for 6 years, the father of my unborn children, and I felt something inside me go very, very cold. I said, "We should get back to the party." He looked surprised. He expected tears. He expected hysteria. He expected the old Rachel, the one who always forgave, always compromised, always put everyone else first. But that Rachel died by the fountain. The woman who walked back into that ballroom was someone new, someone dangerous. They just did not know it yet. The next morning, I woke in our bedroom alone. Marcus had not come home. I found him in the kitchen drinking coffee like nothing had happened. When I walked in, he barely looked up from his phone. I said we needed to talk. He sighed dramatically. He said, "Rachel, I do not have time for this. I have meetings." I told him to cancel them. I told him we needed to discuss what I saw last night. He finally put down his phone. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Contempt. Pure contempt. He said, "Fine, let us talk. Yes, I have been seeing Courtney. It is not a big deal. It is just physical. She understands the pressure I am under. You are always tired, always complaining, always wanting something. A man has needs." I asked him if he was seriously blaming me for his affair. He laughed. He said, "You know what your problem is, Rachel? You are too sensitive. You take everything personally. I am not leaving you. I just need something you cannot give me right now. When the babies come, things will go back to normal." I told him I wanted a divorce. The word hung in the air between us. For a moment, I saw fear flash across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by something harder. He said, with what money? With what skills? You have not worked in 5 years. You have no friends. You pushed them all away, remember? You have nowhere to go. Besides, do you really want to raise twins alone? Think about what is best for the babies. I said I would take half of everything. I said I would call a lawyer. He stepped closer to me, close enough that I could smell Courtney's perfume still clinging to his shirt. He said, you signed a prenup, Rachel. You get nothing if you leave. And even if you tried to fight it, do you know how many lawyers my family has? How many judges my mother knows? You would be destroyed before you filed a single paper. He smiled then, a terrible smile. He said, face it, Rachel, you are stuck. You have been stuck since the day you married me. The only question is whether you want to be miserable about it or accept your position and make the best of things. I suggest option 2. He picked up his coffee and walked out. I stood in that kitchen, my hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. He was right about some things. I had no money of my own. I had no friends anymore. I had not spoken to my parents in months. I was completely isolated. This is how they do it. They do not lock you in a room. They make you believe you locked yourself in. They do not take your phone. They make you too ashamed to use it. The cage is not made of bars. It is made of carefully constructed beliefs that you have nowhere else to go. I called my mother for the first time in months. When she answered, I started crying and could not stop. She said, baby, what is wrong? Talk to me. I am right here. I was trying to tell her everything when Marcus walked back into the kitchen. He must have been listening outside the door. He took the phone from my hand before I could react. He said, Denise, hey, it is Marcus. Rachel is just having some pregnancy hormones. Everything is fine here. I will have her call you back when she is feeling better. Then he hung up. He looked at me and his voice was soft, almost gentle. He said, do not make me look bad to your family, Rachel. That is embarrassing for everyone. Let us just get through these last few months, have the babies, and everything will settle down. I promise. Then he kissed my forehead like I was a child who had thrown a tantrum. He said, I have to go. Be good. And he left. I stood there holding my belly, feeling the twins kick against my palms. I thought about what Marcus said. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being too emotional. Maybe all marriages had rough patches. Maybe I should just be grateful for what I had. Then I caught my reflection in the window. I saw a woman in a beige nightgown with swollen eyes and slumped shoulders. A woman who had given up everything and still was not enough. And I thought, no, this is not how my story ends. If someone tells you that you have no options, that is usually because they are terrified of what happens if you realize you do. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I needed to remember who I was before I became Mrs. Mitchell. I went to my closet and dug through boxes I had not opened in years. At the very back, I found it, my CPA license, my old laptop, records from my previous life. I was Rachel Dawson before I was Rachel Mitchell, and Rachel Dawson knew how to find truth in numbers. I just needed access. 3 days after the anniversary party, Victoria summoned me to a family meeting. I expected Marcus to be there. Instead, when I walked into Victoria's private office, I found her sitting behind a mahogany desk with the family lawyer on one side and Courtney Wells on the other. Courtney was wearing a modest blue dress, appropriate, professional, like she belonged there. Victoria smiled her cold smile and said, please sit down, Rachel. We have some things to discuss. I sat in the chair across from them. It was lower than theirs, intentionally lower. Everything Victoria did was intentional. She said, I want to start by saying that we all appreciate everything you have done for this family. You have been a good wife to Marcus, a good representative of the Mitchell name. I waited. I knew there was a but coming. She said, but we both know this marriage has run its course. Marcus is not happy. You are not happy. The kindest thing for everyone, especially the children, is to make a clean break. I asked her what exactly she was proposing. The lawyer slid a document across the desk. It was thick, official looking. He said, this is a proposed settlement agreement, quite generous given the circumstances. I looked at the terms. Rachel would quietly divorce Marcus after the children were born. Rachel would sign over full custody to Marcus for the children's stability. Rachel would receive $50,000 in relocation assistance to anywhere she wanted to go. In exchange, Rachel would sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and never speak about the Mitchell family again. $50,000. 6 years of my life, my career, my identity, my unborn children, all of it worth $50,000 to them. I asked what would happen if I refused. Victoria's smile did not waver. She said, "I was hoping you would be reasonable about this. But if not, well, we have been documenting some concerning behavior. Mood swings, paranoid accusations, erratic episodes." She pulled out a folder. Inside were statements from household staff, medical records I had never seen, a letter from a psychiatrist I had never met diagnosing me with pregnancy-induced psychosis. Victoria said, "If you force us to, we will have you declared mentally unfit. We will take emergency custody of the children the moment they are born, and you will spend years fighting us in court with no money and no credibility until you have nothing left." She slid the document closer to me. She said, "Or you can sign this and walk away with your dignity. It is really very simple." Courtney had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she did not say anything. She just sat there in her blue dress, waiting to take my place. I looked at the signature on that document. For a moment, I considered signing it, just ending it, walking away. Then I thought about my mother, working double shifts at the school cafeteria so I could go to college. I thought about my father, who died with grease under his fingernails and pride in his eyes because his daughter was going to be somebody. I did not come from nothing just to be made into nothing. I looked Victoria in the eye and said, "I need time to think about it." Her smile flickered. "Just for a second." She said, "Of course, take a few days. But do not take too long. Our patience has limits." I stood up and walked out of that office. My legs were shaking, but I kept my back straight. I would not let them see me break. In the parking lot, I was fumbling for my car keys when someone called my name. It was Jerome Washington, the family driver for 20 years. A quiet man who saw everything and said nothing. He was holding a flash drive. He said, "Mrs. Rachel, you were kind to my family when you did not have to be. My daughter's surgery 5 years ago. I know that was you who paid the bill." I had almost forgotten. His daughter needed an operation and the Mitchells refused to help. I had used my personal savings. It was not that much money. It just seemed like the right thing to do. Jerome pressed the flash drive into my hand. He said, "There are things on here you need to see. Be careful who you trust." Before I could respond, he was walking away. I sat in my car for a long time holding that flash drive. Whatever was on it, there was no going back once I looked. But going back was never really an option anyway. I drove to a hotel downtown, used the last of my personal savings to pay cash for a room, and I opened the flash drive. What I found changed everything. The flash drive contained years of Jerome's careful observations. Dates and times, photographs taken from a distance, overheard conversations transcribed in neat handwriting. He had been documenting the Mitchell family's secrets for decades. But I needed more than observations. I needed financial proof. Then I remembered something important. I was a certified public accountant. And 6 years ago, when I was still trying to be useful to the family, Marcus had given me login credentials to the household accounting software so I could help organize charity donations. No one had ever thought to revoke my access. No one thought the boring pregnant wife was a threat. They forgot something about me. Before I was Mrs. Mitchell, I was Rachel Dawson, CPA. I spent 10 years making numbers tell stories. And the Mitchell family numbers were telling a very interesting story. I spent 3 days in that hotel room, barely sleeping, tracing transactions through the Mitchell financial records. What I found made my head spin. $2 million in payments to consulting firms that did not exist. I checked the addresses. They were empty lots and abandoned buildings, property transfers to shell companies registered in Delaware. When I dug deeper, the beneficial owner of those shell companies was Courtney Wells. A second set of accounting books hidden in a subfolder no one was supposed to find. The official books showed the company barely breaking even. The hidden books showed millions in profit being siphoned off before taxes. The Mitchell family was not just cheating on their spouses. They were cheating the IRS. I spent 6 years being told I was not smart enough, not sophisticated enough, not good enough. Turns out I was too smart for them, and they just never bothered to check. But I needed help. I could not fight the Mitchells alone. I thought about who I could trust. My old friends were gone. My family was too far away. Then I remembered Patty Brennan. Patty and I were roommates freshman year of college. She was loud and fearless and wanted to be a journalist who took down corrupt, powerful people. We lost touch after I married Marcus. Victoria had made it clear that Patty was not appropriate for my new social circle. I found her online. She was now an investigative reporter at a major newspaper. She had won awards. She had a reputation for exposing fraud. I called her from a burner phone I bought at a gas station. She answered on the third ring. I said, "Patty, it is Rachel." "Rachel Dawson, I need your help." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Rachel? Girl, you disappeared for 5 years. I thought you were dead or brainwashed or both." I said, "Maybe a little of both, but I am awake now and I have a story you are going to want to hear." I told her everything. The affair, the ultimatum, the psychiatric threats, the financial fraud I had discovered. When I finished, Patty was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Send me everything. And Rachel, I am sorry I did not fight harder to stay in your life. I should have known something was wrong." I sent her the documents that night. For the first time in months, I felt hope. The Mitchells thought they were untouchable. They were about to learn otherwise. I went to sleep in that hotel room feeling something I had not felt in years. Control. I was finally taking control of my own life. That feeling lasted exactly 8 hours. I woke to pounding on my hotel room door. At first, I thought it was housekeeping. Then I heard the voices. "Mitchell Security. Open the door, Mrs. Mitchell. We know you are in there." My heart stopped. I grabbed my laptop and looked for another way out. There was no window large enough to climb through. No back door, no fire escape. I was on the 14th floor of a building owned by a Mitchell subsidiary. I was trapped. The pounding got louder. Then I heard the beep of a master key card. The door burst open. 3 men in black suits rushed in. I recognized one of them. He had been at my wedding, standing in the background. Security, I had thought then. Now I understood he was something else entirely. One of them grabbed my laptop before I could react. Another took my phone, my notes, the flash drive Jerome had given me. The third pulled me to my feet with hands that left bruises on my arms. I screamed. I fought. I kicked one of them in the shin hard enough to make him stumble. But I was 7 months pregnant, and they were trained professionals. It was not even close to a fair fight. Victoria's voice came through a phone one of them was holding on speaker. She sounded almost bored. She said, "Did you really think we do not monitor our own systems, Rachel? Our IT department flagged your login within 30 seconds. We have been watching everything you accessed, every file you copied, every email you read." My blood ran cold. They knew everything. Victoria continued. She said, "I have to admit, I underestimated you. I thought you were just a simple girl from Ohio who got lucky. But you have been busy, have you not? Forensic accounting, investigative journalists. You almost impressed me." She paused, then her voice turned to ice. She said almost. They drove me back to the Mitchell estate in a black SUV with tinted windows. No one spoke. I sat in the back seat with my hands shaking, trying to think of a way out. There was no way out. When we arrived at the estate, Marcus was waiting in the foyer. But he was not alone. Standing beside him was a man in a white coat with a clipboard. Behind them stood Courtney Wells, watching with an expression I could not read. Marcus did not look at me with anger. He looked at me with something worse. Pity. He said, "Rachel, this is Dr. Harrison. We are all very concerned about your mental state." I said, "Marcus, please. You know I am not crazy. You know what your mother has been doing." Dr. Harrison made notes on his clipboard. He spoke like I was not even in the room. He said, "Miss Mitchell has been exhibiting classic signs of pregnancy-induced psychosis, paranoid delusions about family conspiracies, erratic behavior including fleeing the family home, attempting to access confidential financial records, contacting media outlets with fabricated accusations." I said, "They are not fabricated. I have proof. Your family has been stealing millions." Dr. Harrison nodded sadly, still writing. He said, "And now we see the persecution complex, the belief that powerful forces are aligned against her. Very common in these cases." I looked at Marcus. I begged him to listen. I said, Marcus, I am carrying your children. Whatever problems we have, you cannot do this. You cannot lock me up and take our babies. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, maybe even guilt. Then Victoria descended the staircase like a queen addressing her subjects. She said, Dr. Harrison, thank you so much for coming on such short notice. As you can see, our daughter-in-law is in crisis. We are all very worried about the safety of those precious babies. She walked over to me and put her hand on my shoulder. Her touch made my skin crawl. She said, Rachel, sweetheart, no one is trying to hurt you. We just want to help. The Greenwood Psychiatric Center is a wonderful facility, very private, very discreet. You will get the care you need, and when the babies are born, we will make sure they have everything they could ever want. I understood then, they were not just going to commit me, they were going to take my children the moment they were born. I would wake up from delivery to find my babies gone, handed over to Marcus and Courtney to raise as their own. I would spend years fighting them in court, years proving I was sane, and by then my children would not even know who I was. Dr. Harrison produced a set of papers. He said, if you will just sign here, Mrs. Mitchell, we can begin the admission process. It is really for the best. I looked at those papers. I looked at Marcus, who would not meet my eyes. I looked at Victoria, who was smiling like she had already won. And then I did something I never thought I would do. I grabbed a pen from Dr. Harrison's pocket and signed my name. Victoria actually laughed. She said, there now. That was not so hard, was it? Dr. Harrison reached for the papers. And that is when I doubled over, clutching my stomach. Screaming in agony. The babies, I gasped. Something is wrong. Oh God, something is wrong. I am bleeding. I can feel it. Help me. Please help me. I was not actually bleeding. But I had been practicing this moment in my head since they dragged me out of that hotel room. I knew it was my only chance. Marcus turned white as a sheet. Whatever else he was, he did not want his children to die. He grabbed Dr. Harrison and shouted, do something. Dr. Harrison looked panicked. He said, I am a psychiatrist, not an obstetrician. She needs an ambulance. Now, Victoria tried to intervene. She said, wait, this could be a trick. She is manipulating you. But I screamed louder. I writhed on the ground. I made sounds I did not know I was capable of making. Someone called 911. I heard sirens approaching. Paramedics rushed in and loaded me onto a stretcher. As they wheeled me out, I caught Victoria's eye. For just a second, I let my mask slip. I let her see that I was not as broken as she thought. Her face went pale, but it was too late. I was already in the ambulance. The commitment papers I had signed were still on the floor of the Mitchell foyer, forgotten in the chaos. I had bought myself time. Now I just had to figure out how to use it. The hospital was my sanctuary. The doctors examined me and found nothing wrong with the pregnancy, but they admitted me anyway. High-risk pregnancy, twins, history of stress-related complications. They wanted to monitor me for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks where the Mitchells could not touch me. I lay in that hospital bed and stared at the ceiling. I had nothing. No laptop, no phone, no evidence, no plan. Everything I had worked for was gone. I was about to give up when my mother walked through the door. Denise Dawson looked older than I remembered. Tired, worn. She was wearing the same blue cardigan she had worn to my college graduation, the one with the button that never stayed closed. She took one look at me and burst into tears. She ran to my bed and held me like I was 5 years old again, like she could protect me from monsters just by holding me tight enough. She said, I drove all night. I did not stop except for gas. When you called and then nothing, when that man answered your phone and said you were fine, I knew. I knew something was terribly wrong. I told her everything, the whole story from the very beginning, the isolation, the affairs, the threats, the fake psychiatric diagnosis, the attempt to steal my babies. When I finished, my mother was not crying anymore. She was angry, angrier than I had ever seen her. She said, those people, those evil, heartless people. I knew from the day I met that woman that something was wrong with her. The way she looked at you, like you were dirt on her shoe. I should have said something. I should have fought harder. I told her it was not her fault. I told her I had pushed everyone away because I was ashamed. She grabbed my face in both hands. She looked me straight in the eyes. She said, You listen to me, Rachel Marie Dawson. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You love someone who did not deserve you. That is not a crime. That is just being human. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn checkbook held together with a rubber band. She said, I have been saving money since the day you got married. Every paycheck I put a little aside. I told myself it was for emergencies. But really, I think I always knew this day would come. $23,000. It is everything I have, and it is yours. I stared at that checkbook. $23,000. 6 years of sacrifice from a woman who made $14 an hour serving lunch to elementary school children. I said, Mom, I cannot take this. She said, you are not taking it. I am giving it. There is a difference. And you are going to use it to fight those monsters and get my grandbabies somewhere safe. I cried then, really cried. Not the scared tears I had been crying for months. These were different. These were tears of gratitude, of love, of realizing that even when everything else was stripped away, I still had this. I still had her. She held me until I stopped shaking. Then she said, now, tell me what you need. The next day, Jerome Washington came to visit. He looked uncomfortable in the hospital, checking over his shoulder every few seconds like he expected Mitchell's security to burst through the door. He sat down beside my bed and spoke in a low voice. He said, Mrs. Rachel, I made copies of everything on that flash drive. 3 copies. One is buried in my backyard. One is in a safety deposit box in Newark. One is with my cousin in Atlanta who has never met a Mitchell in his life. I could have kissed him, he continued. He said, but there is something else, something I have never told anyone, something I have kept secret for 30 years because I was too afraid to speak. I asked him what he meant. He took a deep breath. His hands were trembling. He said Victoria's first husband did not die in a car accident. Or rather, he did, but it was not an accident. I was the one who drove him home from a dinner party that night. He was upset, agitated. He told me he had discovered something about Victoria, something about her and Mr. Tipton, Mitchell Sr., an affair that had been going on for years. Jerome paused. He wiped his eyes. He said, he told me he had proof that Marcus was not his son, blood tests from when the boy was born. Victoria had been sleeping with Mr. Mitchell Sr. the whole time. Their entire marriage was a lie. I felt the room spin around me. Jerome said, he told me he was going to expose everything the next day. He was going to divorce Victoria and reveal the truth about Marcus's paternity. The Mitchell family would be destroyed. He looked at me with haunted eyes. He said, that man's car went off a cliff 2 hours later, on a straight road, in perfect weather. The brakes failed completely. I tried to tell the police, but no one would listen. The Mitchells owned everyone. They still do. I asked him why he was telling me this now. He said, because you are the first person in 30 years brave enough to fight back. And because Victoria Mitchell has gotten away with murder for too long. Whatever you need, Mrs. Rachel, whatever it takes, I am with you until the end. After Jerome left, I made one more phone call. To David Sullivan, the lawyer who owed me a favor. I told him everything. The fraud, the shell companies, the fake psychiatric diagnosis, and now the possible murder of Victoria's first husband. David was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Rachel, do you understand what you are up against? The Mitchells have unlimited resources. They have judges in their pockets. They have destroyed people for less than what you are describing. I said, I know, but I am not going to let them take my children. He said, then we need to be smart. We need to be patient. And we need to hit them where it hurts most. Send me everything Jerome has. I will start building a case. But Rachel, promise me something. I asked what? He said, promise me you will not do anything reckless. These people are dangerous. If they think you are a real threat, they will not just try to commit you. They will try to destroy you completely. I promised. But even as I said the words, I knew that sometimes destruction is the only path to freedom. 3 weeks later, the story broke. I watched the news from my hospital bed, my mother beside me holding my hand. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Mitchell Properties under federal investigation for tax fraud and money laundering. The news anchor was breathless with excitement. She said, sources confirmed that the FBI has opened a formal investigation into Mitchell Properties, the $400 million real estate empire controlled by the prominent Mitchell family. Documents obtained by this station reveal a pattern of systematic tax evasion spanning more than a decade. They showed pictures of the Mitchell estate, pictures of Marcus at charity events, pictures of Victoria accepting awards for philanthropy. My mother squeezed my hands so tight I thought she might break my fingers. The anchor continued. She said the investigation was reportedly triggered by a whistleblower complaint filed with the IRS. Sources close to the family say that the Mitchells are scrambling to contain the damage. Stock in Mitchell-affiliated companies has dropped 42% in early trading. I turned off the television. My mother looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said, "You did it, baby. You actually did it." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel victorious. But something in my gut told me this was not over. It was not over. That afternoon, Marcus called. His voice was different than I had ever heard it. Desperate, broken, human. He said, "Rachel, please. I know I do not deserve to ask you for anything, but I am begging you, call off this investigation." I said, "Why would I do that?" He said, "Because I was wrong about everything, about Courtney, about my mother, about you. I have been a coward my whole life, doing whatever my mother told me to do, but I do not want to lose everything. I do not want to lose you." I almost laughed. I said, "You lost me the moment you chose your mistress over your pregnant wife." He said, I know, but I can change. I will end things with Courtney today. I will go to therapy. I will do whatever it takes. Just please give me another chance. For the babies, for our family, for a moment, a small moment, I felt something shift inside me. This was the apology I had wanted for months, the acknowledgement that I was not crazy, that I was not the problem. But then I remembered standing in that bathroom at my anniversary party. I remembered being invisible at my own celebration. I remembered the commitment papers and the fake psychiatric diagnosis and the way Victoria had smiled when she thought she had won. I said, "Marcus, it is too late, way too late. I want a divorce, full custody of the children, $8 million. And I never want to see your mother again." There was a long pause. Then Marcus said something that surprised me. He said, "I understand. I will talk to my lawyers. You will have everything you asked for." "I am sorry, Rachel. I am so sorry." He hung up. I sat there staring at the phone. That was too easy. Way too easy. The Mitchells never surrendered without a fight. 2 hours later, I found out why. I was eating dinner when I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. Then another. Then a gush of warm fluid between my legs. No, I thought, not now, not yet. I am only 33 weeks. But my body did not care about my plans. I screamed for the nurse. She took one look at me and hit the emergency button. The next few hours were chaos. Doctors running, machines beeping, someone yelling about fetal distress. I was conscious but barely, floating in a haze of fear and medication. I remember grabbing a nurse's hand. I remember saying, "Save my babies. Please save my babies." Then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a different room. Recovery, I realized. Post-surgery, a nurse was standing beside my bed with a careful expression. The kind of expression medical professionals use when they have bad news. She said, "Mrs. Mitchell, you had an emergency cesarean section. You lost a lot of blood, but you are stable now." I grabbed her arm. I said, "The babies, where are my babies?" She said, "Your son is healthy. He is in the nursery. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. He is perfect." I said, "And my daughter, where is Sophie?" The nurse hesitated. That hesitation lasted only a second, but it felt like a lifetime. She said, "Sophie is in the NICU. She is having some trouble breathing. Her lungs are underdeveloped. The doctors are doing everything they can." I tried to get out of bed. I needed to see her. I needed to hold her, but my body had just been cut open. I could barely move. The nurse helped me into a wheelchair. She took me to the NICU. Sophie was so small. 4 pounds, 11 ounces. She looked like a doll, like something that could not possibly be real. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped in steady rhythms. Her tiny chest rose and fell with each labored breath. I pressed my hand against the glass. I said her name over and over, like if I said it enough times, she would hear me and fight harder. The doctor came to update me. He was young with kind eyes and a grave expression. He said, "The next 48 hours are critical. Sophie's lungs are not fully developed. We have her on oxygen support, and we are giving her medication to help mature her lung tissue. But I have to be honest with you, Mrs. Mitchell. It could go either way. I asked him what her chances were. He paused. Then he said 50-50, maybe 60-40 if she responds well to treatment. I am sorry I cannot give you better odds. 50-50. My daughter's life reduced to a coin flip. I sat in that NICU waiting room all night. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I just watched my daughter fight for her life through a pane of glass. That was where Victoria found me the next morning. She walked into the NICU like she owned the place, which, knowing the Mitchells, she probably did. She was perfectly composed, not a hair out of place. She was wearing a black dress like she was already attending a funeral. She sat down beside me. She said, I heard about Sophie. Such a tragedy. I have been praying for her all night. I did not look at her. I said, get out. She ignored me. She said, I also heard about your little investigation. Very clever, getting the FBI involved. I have to admit, I underestimated you. But here's the thing about federal investigations, Rachel. They take years, decades sometimes, and in the meantime, life goes on. She pulled out a document from her purse. She said, here is what is going to happen. You are going to drop the investigation. You are going to sign over custody of both children to Marcus, and you are going to disappear. In exchange, I will make sure you receive a generous settlement, enough to start over somewhere far away. I finally looked at her and I said, and if I refuse? She smiled. That cold, terrible smile. She said, your daughter is very sick, Rachel. She needs the best care money can buy. Right now, she is in a public hospital with overworked doctors and outdated equipment. I could have her transferred to the Mitchell Medical Center within the hour. Private room, round-the-clock specialist. The best neonatal care in the country. She leaned closer. She said, or I could file for emergency custody today, based on your documented mental instability, based on the fact that you are clearly unable to care for yourself, let alone 2 newborns. By this time tomorrow, both of your children could be in my legal custody. And you would be fighting that battle in court for years while your daughter struggles in this second-rate facility. I felt something inside me break. She was right. She had all the power. She had the money, the lawyers, the connections, and my daughter was dying. What kind of mother would I be if my pride cost Sophie her life? Victoria stood up. She smoothed her black dress. She said, you have until tomorrow morning to decide. I suggest you think about what is really best for those children. She walked away without looking back. I sat there in that waiting room, watching my daughter breathe through a machine, and I faced the hardest decision of my life. Surrender everything and save my daughter, or keep fighting and risk losing her forever. I spent that night in the NICU, watching Sophie breathe. The machines beeped in steady rhythms. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting tubes, writing notes on charts. They moved with quiet efficiency, like they had done this 1,000 times before. Maybe they had, but this was my first time, my only time, my daughter. Around 3 in the morning, when the hospital was quietest, I started talking to her. I told her about the house I grew up in, the one with the leaky roof and the kitchen that smelled like my father's coffee. I told her about my mother, who worked double shifts so I could go to college. I told her about the day I graduated, how my parents cried and said they had never been prouder of anything in their entire lives. I told her about meeting her father, how he made me laugh, how he made me feel special, how I thought I had found my fairy tale. I told her about the day I found out I was pregnant with her, how I cried for an hour because I was so happy, how I promised her that I would be the best mother in the world. And then I told her about everything that had happened since, the betrayal, the humiliation, the threats. The moment I stood in that garden and watched my whole world fall apart, I said, I am so sorry, Sophie. I tried to protect you. I tried to build you a better life, but I failed. I failed at everything. I pressed my hand against the glass. I said, your grandmother wants me to give you up. She says it is the only way to save you. And maybe she is right. Maybe you would be better off with them. They have money. They have doctors. They have everything I do not have. I felt tears running down my face. I said, but here is the thing I keep thinking about. What kind of life would that be for you? Growing up in that house with those people, learning that money matters more than love. Learning that it is okay to hurt people as long as you are rich enough to get away with it. Sophie's tiny hand moved, just a little, just a twitch. But I saw it. I said, I do not want that for you. I want you to grow up knowing that your mother fought for you, that she never gave up, that she stood up to monsters even when she was terrified, because that is what mothers do. I wiped my eyes. I said, so here's what we are going to do, Sophie. We are going to fight, you and me, together. You are going to keep breathing. You are going to get stronger. And I am going to destroy everyone who ever tried to hurt us. I did not know if she could hear me. I did not know if it mattered. But in that moment, I made a decision. I was done being afraid. The next morning, I called Jerome. I said, I need everything you have on Victoria's first husband. Everything. Police reports, insurance documents, autopsy records, anything that proves that accident was not an accident. He said, I have it all. What are you planning? I said, I am going to end this today. An hour later, David Sullivan walked into my hospital room with a briefcase full of documents. He said, I have been up all night, going through everything Jerome sent. Rachel, this is explosive. If even half of this is true, Victoria Mitchell is guilty of first-degree murder. I said, I know, but we are not going to use the murder. He looked confused. He said, what do you mean? This is our strongest weapon. I said, murder charges take years to prove. Victoria has the best lawyers money can buy. By the time we get a conviction, if we ever get a conviction, my children will be grown. I need something faster. Something that hits her where it really hurts. David sat down slowly. He said, what did you have in mind? I told him about the blood tests, about Victoria's first husband discovering that Marcus was not his biological son, about the 38 years of fraud that had followed. I said Victoria did not just marry into the Mitchell family. She infiltrated it. Marcus is not a Mitchell by blood. His entire inheritance, his position in the company, his share of that $400 million empire, all of it is based on a lie. David's eyes went wide. He said, if we can prove that, I said one DNA test. That is all it takes. One DNA test and Marcus loses everything. The cousins inherit instead. The entire Mitchell power structure collapses. David started pacing. He said, this is incredible, but Rachel, Victoria will fight this tooth and nail. She will claim the blood tests were faked. She will hire experts to dispute the DNA. I said, let her try. The truth has a way of coming out eventually. And in the meantime, the scandal alone will destroy her. The board of directors will not wait for a court verdict. They will act immediately to protect themselves. David nodded slowly. He said, so what is the play? I said, we are not going to sue her. We are not going to file charges. We are going to blackmail her. He stared at me. He said, Rachel, I said, not for money, for my children, for my freedom. Victoria cares about one thing more than anything else in the world. The Mitchell legacy, the family name, the empire she murdered to build. I am going to threaten to take all of that away from her, and she is going to give me exactly what I want. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. He said, you know something? When we were in college, I always thought you were too nice, too trusting, too easy to push around. I said, I was. He said, what changed? I looked through the window at the NICU, where my daughter was still fighting for her life. I said, I became a mother. At 10 o'clock that morning, Victoria Mitchell walked into my hospital room expecting to receive my surrender. Instead, she found me sitting up in bed with David Sullivan beside me and a folder of documents on my lap. I said, sit down, Victoria, we need to talk. She looked annoyed. She said, I do not have time for games, Rachel. Do you have an answer for me or not? I said, I do. The answer is no. I am not signing anything. I am not giving up my children, and I am not disappearing. Victoria's face hardened. She said, then you leave me no choice. My lawyers will file for emergency custody within the hour. By tonight, your children will be... I interrupted her. I said, before you do that, there is something you should see. I opened the folder and spread the documents across my bed. Police reports from 30 years ago, insurance payouts that did not match. A mechanic's inspection showing the brakes were perfect 1 week before the accident. Blood test results from a hospital in Connecticut dated 38 years ago. And at the very bottom, a photograph. A young Victoria with a man who was clearly not her husband. A man who looked exactly like Marcus does today. Victoria's face went white. I said, I know everything, Victoria. I know you killed your first husband. I know you have been sleeping with Marcus's real father for over 40 years. I know that Marcus is not a Mitchell by blood, which means his entire inheritance is fraudulent. Victoria grabbed the edge of my bed to steady herself. For the first time since I had known her, she looked afraid. She said, "Where did you get these?" I said, "That does not matter. What matters is what I am going to do with them." I leaned forward. I said, "I do not need to prove you committed murder, Victoria. I just need to prove that Marcus is not a Mitchell. One DNA test, $67 at Savi's. That is what your entire empire is worth. One cotton swab and everything you spent 40 years building comes crashing down." Victoria's hands were shaking. She said, "You are bluffing. No one would believe you." I said, "Maybe not, but are you willing to take that chance?" One anonymous tip to the board of directors, one leaked document to the press, one DNA test demanded by Marcus's cousins, who I hear have been very interested in the company's financials lately. How long do you think your empire would last? Victoria stared at me. I stared back. Neither of us blinked. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. She said, "What do you want?" I said, "Full custody of both children, $8 million, and a legally binding agreement that you and Marcus will never contact me or my children again. In exchange, I keep the paternity secret buried. Your empire stays intact. Marcus keeps his inheritance. And we all pretend this conversation never happened." Victoria laughed bitterly. She said, $8 million? You think you can blackmail me for $8 million? I said, "I think $8 million is cheap compared to $400 million. I am not trying to destroy you, Victoria. I am just trying to protect my children. Sign the agreement and we never speak again. Refuse and I send everything I have to every news outlet and board member in the country. Your choice." Victoria looked at David. She said, "She cannot do this. This is extortion. This is illegal." David shrugged. He said, "It is only extortion if she is threatening to reveal a crime. Adultery is not a crime. Paternity questions are not crimes. All she is doing is negotiating a settlement. Happens every day." Victoria turned back to me. Her face was twisted with rage and something else. Fear. She said, "You think you have won? You think this is over?" I said, "I think it is over for you. You spent 40 years building an empire on lies and murder. You thought you were untouchable. But here is the thing about lies, Victoria. They are only as strong as the people keeping them. And one by one, those people are starting to talk." I held up the agreement David had prepared. I said, "Sign this. Walk away. And pray that I am more merciful than you ever were." For a long moment, Victoria did not move. I could see her calculating, weighing her options, looking for a way out. There was no way out. She took the pen from David's hand. She signed the agreement. Then she looked at me one more time. Her eyes were filled with hatred. She said, "You will regret this. You think you have won, but you have no idea what you have done. This is not over, Rachel. This will never be over." I smiled. I said, "Yes, it is. You just do not know it yet. Now get out of my hospital room. I have children to take care of." Victoria Mitchell walked out without another word. I leaned back in my bed and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Then I heard a sound from the door. One of the NICU nurses was standing there with tears in her eyes. She said, "Mrs. Mitchell, I have news. Sophie is breathing on her own. Her oxygen levels are normal. The doctor says she is going to be okay." I started crying. For the first time in a very long time, they were tears of joy. I'm sitting on the porch of a 3-bedroom house in Portland, Oregon, watching my children play in the backyard. Sophie is running through the grass, chasing butterflies with her brother James. She is small for her age, but fierce. Her doctors call her a miracle baby. I call her my little fighter. She has already proven she can survive anything. James is bigger, bolder, always the first to try something new. He has his father's eyes, which used to break my heart. Now I see them as a reminder that something beautiful can come from something broken. My mother lives in the cottage behind the main house. I bought her a retirement she never dreamed of. She cried for 3 days when she saw it. Now she babysits the twins while I work, makes Sunday dinner every week, and tells everyone she meets that her daughter is the bravest woman in the world. I am not brave. I just refused to give up. The settlement came through 6 months ago. $8 million minus taxes and legal fees. Enough to buy this house. Enough to start my consulting firm. Enough to help other women who are trapped in situations like mine was. I call the firm Second Chances Financial. We help women going through difficult divorces understand their financial options. We teach them how to read bank statements and trace hidden assets and protect themselves from being left with nothing. Most of my clients are women like me, women who were told they had no choices, women who discovered they had more power than anyone let them believe. Last month, I got a letter from Marcus. He wanted to see the twins. He said he was in therapy. He said he was sorry. He said he had changed. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote back one line. The best thing you ever gave me was the courage to leave you. Please do not contact us again. Some people might think that is harsh. Some people believe in forgiveness no matter what. I used to be one of those people. But I have learned that forgiveness is for mistakes, for accidents, for things that happened because someone was careless or confused or weak. What the Mitchells did to me was not a mistake. It was deliberate, calculated, cruel. I do not owe them my peace. I heard through the grapevine that the Mitchell Company is still under federal investigation. The cousins did eventually request an audit. Turns out $23 million was missing from the books. Funny how that works. Victoria is still fighting to keep the family reputation intact. She hired 3 different PR firms. She donated $10 million to charity. She gave interviews about how difficult it is to be a woman in business. None of it is working. Marcus and Courtney broke up 4 months after my divorce was finalized. Apparently, she found someone richer. I cannot say I was surprised. Women like Courtney always do. Last I heard, Marcus was living alone in a condo downtown, attending AA meetings, trying to rebuild a life his mother built for him on lies. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Sophie is calling my name now. She wants to show me a ladybug she found. James is running toward the house because he smelled the cookies my mother is baking. I put down my coffee and walk into the backyard. Sophie holds up her hand with the ladybug carefully balanced on her finger. She says, "Look, Mommy, it is red like your dress." I crouch down beside her. I say, "You know what ladybugs mean, Sophie?" She shakes her head. I say they mean good luck. They mean that even when things are hard, something beautiful can happen if you just hold on. She smiles at me. That smile that saved my life 100 times over. She says, "I love you, Mommy." I say, "I love you too, baby. More than you will ever know." I watch the ladybug fly away into the afternoon sun. This is my life now. It is not perfect. Some nights I still wake up in a cold sweat, dreaming about commitment papers and custody threats, and Victoria's cold smile. Some days I still flinch when I hear a man raise his voice, but I am healing, slowly, day by day, and my children are safe. That is all that matters. If you are listening to this story and you see yourself in any part of it, I want you to know something. I was exactly where you are. I was trapped, scared, convinced I had no options. I was surrounded by people who wanted me to believe I was powerless because my power terrified them. But here is what they do not want you to know. You are smarter than they think. You are stronger than they know. And the very qualities they dismiss as weaknesses, your kindness, your patience, your attention to detail, those might be the exact weapons you need to save yourself. Start small. Document everything. Find one person you trust. It does not have to be a lawyer or a journalist. It can be your mother. It can be a friend from college. It can be the family driver who has been watching everything for 30 years. One person is all you need to start. And remember this, always. They want you to believe you are powerless because your power terrifies them. You are not powerless. You are just not finished yet. That anniversary party was supposed to be my end. The night I was humiliated in front of 200 people and forced to accept my place as a disposable Mitchell wife. Instead, it became my beginning. Victoria taught me that the world is full of people who will try to make you small. Marcus taught me that love without respect is just a prettier word for control. Courtney taught me that some people will always believe they deserve what you built. But my mother taught me something more important. Real love shows up with $23,000 saved from a lunch lady's salary, no questions asked. Real strength is not about winning every battle. It is about standing up one more time than they knock you down. And real victory is not about revenge. It is about building a life so beautiful that your past becomes nothing but a story you tell on quiet evenings. When your children are asleep and the stars are bright, and you finally understand that everything you went through led you exactly where you were meant to be. Sophie is tugging at my hand now. She wants to catch more ladybugs. James is covered in cookie crumbs and grinning like he just got away with something. My mother is waving from the cottage window, pointing at her watch because dinner is almost ready. I take a deep breath of Oregon air. This is my life. This is my family. This is my happy ending. And nobody will ever take it from me again. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because next week I have another incredible story for you. A woman discovers her husband has been hiding a second family for 15 years, and her revenge involves a confrontation at his secret daughter's wedding that no one saw coming. Comment below and tell me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have signed the agreement? Would you have fought harder? Would you have forgiven Marcus? I want to hear your thoughts. And remember, always remember, you were never trapped. You were just planning your escape. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. Share this with every woman who needs to know she is stronger than she thinks. And comment below. Tell me, Team Rachel, or not. What would you have done differently? Would you have taken the 8 million, or would you have exposed everything and burned the whole empire down? I read every single comment, and the best ones might inspire my next story. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because next week, I have something even more jaw-dropping for you. A woman discovers her husband has been hiding a second family for 15 years, and her revenge at his secret daughter's wedding? Nobody saw it coming. Remember what Rachel taught us today. You are not powerless. You are just not finished yet. See you in the next one.